Hey everybody, Teal here. If you saw in my last vlog, I got a amazing care package from one of my patrons, Sheila. Thank you again. And in that care package were, I think, 9 different watercolor papers for me to try out because we've been talking about trying out different watercolor papers and figuring out, like, what's our jam. So I am ready to go through these and share with you like my experience with these papers. I've also got I bought this pad of Stonehenge cold pressed watercolor paper months ago. Like, I'm talking about maybe even October, possibly September is when I got it, and I still haven't tried it. So I'm putting that in with this video. We're going to try out 10 different watercolor papers. They are all cold pressed, and they are all 100% cotton. Yeah, let's get to it because this is a lot of paper to try. And if you want to see more videos like this, hang out with me, see what's going on, remember to press subscribe and to like my video. Alright, so I've got my paper. I've got mostly clean water. I'll be using this Winsor & Newton professional watercolor set. And this paintbrush, which I got from Blue Heron Arts. They have really lovely, they're supposed to be for calligraphy, but they're amazing with watercolor. Okay, so we've got our tools ready. I'll put up the name of the paper on the screen. That way you know what's going on while we're doing it. This is Kilimanjaro 140 pound bright white 100% cotton cold pressed watercolor paper. So I'm going to do the same thing on each paper. What I'm going to do is I'll lay down some water in like a square, and I'm gonna really pack in some color. I think I'll use this one since I have the most of it. This is Prussian blue. And I'm just gonna like pack it in one corner and like see what happens. Just see what goes on. And then I'm gonna rinse that off, mostly dry my brush, get some paint again, and I'm gonna paint a square here so you can kind of see like what happens with the texture of the paper. It's not dry enough. Water in there, see what happens. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint an eye, like a really loose, basic eye, and see how it goes. So far I really like how the paint seems to stay where you put it. Like, I don't feel like I'm chasing after the paint to try to get it to stop going somewhere, if you know what I mean. The texture of the paper is like kind of smooth. It's not too textured. I mean, you can see it, but it is cold pressed, so you can't expect it to be flat, you know. Let's get out our handy dandy hair dryer. It does kind of already dry fast on its own. This is drying pretty fast. I mean, this of course is very wet, so okay. It does ripple and move a little bit. So far I do really like this paper a lot. It does seem to take a moment to sink in. Because I don't think I've ever actually experienced putting a blow dryer to paper and the paint moving around so like openly. Like you saw that. That went where it wanted to go. Which is a little bit like, that's fine because lately I've been trying to wait for paper to dry instead of using a hairdryer. So in day to day, that's fine. But if I'm using a hairdryer to dry it so I can move a little bit faster, I'm not so sure about that. But I do like how smooth this paper is. It kind of seems like the texture disappears underneath the paint, which I like. I like smoother images, but the power, the sheer power of cold press paper. Yeah, you see how it doesn't go anywhere very much, aside from the very wet bits. Let's do the same thing again. We've got okay, so this is the same kind of paper except natural white. So the last one was bright white. This one is natural white. So this one was probably, or the other one was probably bleached. So we'll do the same thing. We'll get some water. This one seems a little bit finer of a texture, I think. So I feel like more happened here than in the other one. Oh, let me do that drop of water. Boop. See what happens. It seems like this paper would be really good to do several thin washes on very quickly, because even the center of this spot is already within seconds drying. But where it's more wet, it takes quite a bit of time. Like here, right here is drying, right here is drying. This paper really takes its time to absorb a lot of water. So when there's a little bit, it's quick. It will move around on you. I'm really enjoying my experience with this paper. This is definitely not a paper to pick up paint from. So if you lay some color down and it dries, that's going to be there. Alright, okay. Next up we've got a chunky one. Okay, so this is Lana, or Lana? I'm guessing Lana. 300-pound cold pressed 100% cotton paper. Oh my goodness. Can you see? Will it let me show you? Look how thick this is. There we go. Thick. Alright. So, hold on, let's take a sip of coffee for this one. Now I must have you know, I have never used 300-pound paper before. Not once. Ooh. Okay, so paint likes to move on this kind of paper. Very textured. Lately I've been feeling like I prefer less texture on watercolor papers. So while the power of the 300 might be really cool to make a lot of layers on, it's definitely going to have that textured effect. It doesn't feel like super textured while you're painting. Like this feels very smooth, almost like I'm painting on velvet. It does feel like this paper handles water really well. Like it won't, I wonder, let's see. The water will more quickly sink into the paper than it will move around. Oh, but it takes a lot more effort to dry. Okay. So this would be really good for doing like, whoa, look what's happening. Hold up, guys. So this paper might be great for really cool effects like this and for having really smooth gradients. Like look at that grade. I didn't even try. I just put the paint down. It was wet. The paper was still wet and it just effortlessly, this happened. So let me dry it for longer so I can get some details in there. Also, have you guys noticed this paper is not buckling? I know it's heavy paper. I know it's not like, it's very unlikely to buckle, but I'm still rather amazed. Oh, this is such a cool experience. So yeah, once it's dry all the way, you can really get some clean layers on there. I do feel like I need more paint to put down as saturated of a color as I'd like. But it does feel like when I do get a lot of paint, the color is really, really saturated. Like I feel like it's not fading away or anything like that, or it's not challenged by the color of the paper or something. After we do a run of all of these, I'm going to put a like another strip of color onto over it to see how the it layers. Okay, this is another chunky one. This is Waterford 300 pound cold pressed 100% cotton watercolor paper. I have never tried any of these brands so far. I've actually never heard of Lana, which is the one that we just did. Oh, I did this wrong. Oops. Okay, well, we're going to pretend this is the textured one. I have heard of Kilimanjaro, and I have heard of Waterford, but very loosely. I haven't heard of Waterford to the point where like I know a lot about it or anything like that. The color on here seems really vibrant, like really bright. And it seems like it's moving similarly to the first paper. Yeah, so you see the water still just kind of like moving around. Whereas on the Lana, the water didn't move. It kind of like sunk in, but it did stay wet for longer. I like that it feels like you can re-wet this later on. Let me try it on the Lana. Not as much here. I wonder if that was just not dry yet. So where the last paper I felt like I needed a lot of the watercolor to make it like look like the color that it is, this paper is doing the opposite. Okay, I don't know if you saw that because my camera cut off because it had been 20 minutes, but that did a lot right there. And so what I was saying was I prefer bright white paper over natural or off-white. It's just something like it messes with my head about contrast. On the off-white or natural white paper, it just doesn't, like the art that I make doesn't have enough oomph to it, if you know what I mean. So I oftentimes struggle with natural white colors. What I noticed about this paper too, I think the same with the 300 pound, is that the color is super bright. Like it's super saturated. Look at that. But you see what I mean? I feel like I need more paint to really get the color that I'm going for like full saturation. But that could be useful, like I said before, in having a lot of thin layers and painting in that way. Yeah, there's something about this paper that I really enjoy. I don't know, it might be a favorite, we'll see. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Alright, this is Waterford 200 pound cold pressed 100% cotton. So this one is not quite as heavy as the other Waterford. I think I might, it's very possible that I also have not tried 200 pound watercolor paper. I think everything I have might be 140 or less, or that I've used and tried. This one doesn't seem very textured when you lay it down, which is nice. It definitely sits where you put it, except when you blow dry it. When you blow dry it, it's gonna move all over the place. I feel like this paper would be very good for watercolor work that's very detailed, where you probably want to avoid like colors meshing into each other. Let's see what happens if we put like some watery. Yeah, this paper is really good for very specific like laying down paint in very specific places, if you know what I mean. because it doesn't kind of go everywhere, and I feel like you have a lot of control over what you're putting down with this paper, which could be very useful for someone like me who is impatient but also likes details. So I have a habit of getting a little bit too carried away, and then I end up ruining or muddying up a certain section of a painting, and I can't fix it. You can't get it back after that. Next we've got, oh, I'm excited about this one. This is Strathmore Aquarius II, 80-pound, 100% cotton watercolor paper. I'm really excited about this one because it's very lightweight. It's bright white. There's something about lightweight paper that I really, really enjoy and appreciate. What we might see here is some buckling because of how lightweight it is. The paint moves around a lot. That's good to know. It's very smooth. That's another thing I was excited about. It felt smooth for us, especially for a cold press paper. Like it almost feels like drawing paper. Okay, I don't know if I like it, because see there, I let the paint sit for a bit and it stayed. There's a line of yellow there where I kind of like let it sit for a moment first. Yeah, this paper doesn't, it's not as smooth. The colors don't come together as smoothly as other papers, as on other papers. I also feel like there's a little bit of loss of saturation. There's a little bit of loss of saturation as these colors dry. Like it almost looks pre-muddy. I don't know. I think as if this were in the form of a sketchbook, I might like this a lot. But as a paper to paint on, I'm not so sure. We've got Waterford 140-pound cold pressed watercolor paper. Let's try this out. So this is the lightest of the Waterfords in this pack. Oh, I was about to do the same thing over again. Okay, we'll just do it. We'll do it here. A little bit textured. A little, well, kind of a lot textured. It feels nice to paint on though. Oh, this paper stains too, so if you put a lot of a color down, that color is going to stay there. You see that? Okay, now we've got a very textured Indigo Paper, 140 pounds. Okay, this one is super, super textured. It's also super, super bright. Ooh, that did a weird thing. It like shot out and then like went back in. Yeah, this is super textured. This reminds me of handmade paper. That same quality. A lot of people have been making their own paper lately, like Monkey Mintaka and Witch Hannah, which has been really cool. I love, love, love making paper. College, back in college, I made my own paper from, I don't remember what paper I used, but I made my own paper, and then I put seeds in it, and I did a photo printing process that I can't remember the name of. It was a lot of fun to do, but basically you use screens and you use cyan, magenta, and yellow to print out your papers, and you use a photosensitive media so that like only the parts that you want to be cyan or you want to be magenta will be that color, and in the end you get a relatively realistic looking photograph, which is really cool. It was such a fun process. I'll have to look up the name of it. So I did that, and because the process involves soaking your paper in water, like a lot of water, some of the seeds started growing after some time. This is another paper where I feel like it takes a lot of paint to get the kind of saturation that you might want, but it is really beautiful to paint on. Our last one is our Legion Stonehenge that I've been holding off for months. This poor paper, I was so excited about it because I like the hot press. In one of my much older videos, I did a, I tried it out with you guys. The hot press, oh, can I speak? The hot press version of this paper. So far, what I don't like just off the paper right away is it's got like a mechanical texture to it. That paint spread really fast. Oh, I was about to do that mistake again. Okay, we're not doing that. Seeing the texture. The texture doesn't really come up when you paint though, which is nice. It's just very visible. The paint moves a lot. It does feel very bright, which is really nice if you're going for something like super colorful and saturated. This paper does not need a lot of paint at all. It's so interesting going from one paper that needs a lot of paint to one that doesn't. I do feel like this paper dries pretty fast, so I don't have to stop and do the hair dryer to do like other little details. Like, see, that's not bleeding already, which is nice. I don't know, I kind of like this paper. That felt really nice. Okay, let's space these all out. We're gonna do a quick like wash of paint over a dry section. Let me dry this one a little bit more. So basically what I like to do is I like to run a swatch of paints over a completely dry section of the paper to see what happens. Alright, let's zoom out so we can get a full look at my desk. Is that better? A little bit. Yeah. Okay, so let's do this swatch. Let's get a big brush. Big brush like this. And I like to just get like random bright color, make it really watery. I'm just gonna see what happens. I like to see if the paint underneath will bleed and move. Okay, that one does. This one does. Wow, look how messy that got. It did take a lot more to pick that up though. Okay, so now we have tried them all out quite a bit. Let's see, let's try to narrow down. Yeah, let's try to narrow this down. So, okay, so I shuffled through and I pulled out the ones that don't quite hit it for me. So the Strathmore Aquarius that I was really excited about, the 80 pound paper, I realize now it didn't like wrinkle or anything, which is nice. What I really don't like about it is it seems like everything just kind of like mushes together on this paper. And then I feel like the colors are not as vibrant as they could be. So not my favorite. Nice paper for like, if this was in a sketchbook, I'm all for it. Especially because it doesn't wrinkle. So that's really cool. Like I would make this into a sketchbook if I bought the paper specifically. I might do that. And then also another one that didn't make it is the Kilimanjaro 140 pound. Just because the colors are not super bright, and it did a lot. I have an issue with like, see how it's darker around the edges, almost like it's outlined. I personally have an issue, like technically, and like this happens to me a lot. And if a paper also makes this happen while I'm painting the same way on other papers, it bothers me a lot. So I can't, no go for me. And then this is basically the same paper. It does that weird, it like pulls a lot of the pigment to the edge. You see it here in the middle too. So it doesn't quite cut it compared to these. Great paper though. Then we've got the Lana 140 pound. Really cool, a bit muddy, not so vibrant. Like look how much like that spread out completely. So not something I can quite get into, especially like this bled a lot going over it. So I feel like this would be good for like plein air painting maybe. You know, really like washes, no details or anything like that. Not as many layers kind of situation. And then the cold press Stonehenge. The Stonehenge paper. The colors just seem really desaturated on this paper, which makes me kind of sad. And it also doesn't feel like the colors like gradually fade out very smoothly. Like it would take a lot more effort on my part to do that. So this one doesn't quite make it. So we've got the top 5 here, and I want to tell you why we have the top 5 here, and then we'll figure out my favorite. I'll start with this one because I have this here just because it's a really beautiful paper. Like the paper itself is an aesthetic. Is it something I would use? No. Is it absolutely gorgeous? Yes. But that's why that's in the top 5. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in our not favorite pile, because this is not going to be a favorite because of how textured it is. It did get pretty muddy here. It didn't have that much of like the pigment pooling around the edge, but it had enough of it to bother me, if that makes sense. Okay, then we've got these 4. I like these 2 a lot because of how saturated the color is. Like, the color is gorgeous. So let's talk about these 2 really quick. So this is the Waterford 200 pound. Oh, makes sense. They're both Waterford. So basically just comparing the 200 to the 140. If that's the case, then I prefer... What do I prefer? I don't know. I might have to just lump these together. Yeah, we'll lump these together as Waterford. Waterford's a pretty great paper, I would have to say. And then these 2, we've got the Lana 300 pound and the Waterford 300 pound. Wow, so it seems like brand-wise, Waterford is fantastic. What I liked about the Lana was that, like, that crazy granulating effect that happened. I did not expect that, though. Keeping that in mind, this is not an effect that I would use very often in my own work. I know a lot of people who would make incredible use of it, like Archu, Sheila herself, who gave me this paper, maybe Colors by Shayna. She does a lot of like loose watercolors, which are really cool, and this would have like, that would be really cool with her work. But for me, I might have to say a no for Lana. And I think Waterford is, Waterford's the one. Wow. And this is the brand that I've heard the name of, but didn't really know anything about it. I don't know if I could choose, like, I feel like I would use, I don't know, the 300 feels really nice. And look at that, like, texture. Maybe the 300 could be a favorite. This one's just so vibrant, these 2. But maybe I just pulled more yellow. Maybe that's what I did. Because the blue is dark. Maybe it's the Waterford. So for like actual paintings, I would go for any of these 3. None of them buckled, which was cool. This one, I feel like if you're doing a ton of layers, great. If you're not doing that many layers, but you're doing layers, this one's what's up. If you're doing something like almost sketchbook, or just laying down like ideas for where to place colors, this might be the one. But overall, I think Waterford takes the case. Let me know what you guys think, what you guys like, if you've tried any of these papers, and what you think about them. Thank you guys so much for trying these out with me. See you next time.